This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Jackie O and you're listening to Militantly Mixed.
Yo, this is Rashani from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
I would like to acknowledge that the Militantly Mixed podcast is recorded on the traditional lands of the Chumash and the Tongva people, and I wish to pay my respects to the people of those nations, both past and present.
Hey y'all, welcome to Militantly Mixed, the podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Charmaine, aka Mixed Girl Maine, the busiest mixed race, bisexual, polyamorous, atheist, comic book nerd, cat mom, mask making, Gulf Coast Cosmos comic book co-owning podcaster in this podcasting game. This is episode 119. And I haven't quite decided yet, but I'm thinking this might be the last interview show of 2020. I usually do a reflections episode either at the end of the year or the beginning of the year. And it's usually kind of like I just get a feel for when to do it. And I kind of think that I might do the reflections episode next week because I'm on break from my day job. So it'd be a good time to do it. Also, because I'm on break from my day job, I'm assuming that there's a lot of other people that are on break as well, because my apartment complex is super loud right now, and I'm hoping that it doesn't impact my audio quality. But I can hear stuff in my headphones, so I think it might. So if that's the case, I think there's just a lot of people home right now. Apologies for audio quality. I only have a couple announcements today, and then we're going to jump right into the episode. I'm really going to do my best to commit to being less than 10 minutes on my intros if I can, because you know I can talk. All right, so the first announcement is last week I mentioned I was a guest on the Squeezin' Lemons podcast, which is hosted by Ginger, one of our current cousin, but former guests of Militantly Mixed from episode 36, which was a sense of racial capital in mixedness. And I think we did this one in 2018 or 2019, right towards the beginning of the year or something like that. It was definitely a while ago. But she and her co-host Jason set a very lovely virtual table for me, and we had a really nice conversation. The episode is from their season 2, episode 15. It's called Kamala and Our Mixed Emotions with Mixed Girl Maine. And so we talked about, you know, the complicated feelings that some of us have about Kamala Harris as a candidate and as a mixed person. And it's one of the few times I've gotten to talk about Kamala as a fellow Black Asian person too. So it was a good conversation, had a great time. And you can go back and listen to the Ginger episode 36, if you want to get to know her or re-get to know her if you haven't heard it in a couple years. And then in I think February or late January, we'll air the episode with Jason, her co-host. So it's really nice to get to know Jason and to get to chat with Ginger again, because back when we spoke in 2018, whenever that was, she had opened me up to a few things that I didn't know to be looking for in terms of academia and mixedness. And it was really nice to get a chance to talk to her again. So check out their show. I'll put a link to the show notes in it, but whatever podcatcher you listen to, you can find it. It is called Squeezin' Lemons. It's a good show. Check it out. Support one of our cousins. Give them a subscribe and a like and a review on the iTunes or the Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. The other announcement that I have is for those of you who may not be on our Instagram, we have been doing the 12 days of mixedness on Instagram every day, sometime between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern, or no, Pacific. I forgot where I live. Sometime between 5 and 7 p.m. Pacific every night, I have been dropping a new video where one of our cousins, a former guest of Militantly Mixed or someone that I've met or been involved with in mixedness in some way, shape, or form, who has some relationship with Militantly Mixed, I sent them a bunch of questions and a few of them sent me back answers via video so that I can clip it together for this Instagram thing. And it's been a lot of fun. It seems like it was something that people really enjoyed doing. and it's going to be a tradition of Militantly Mixed from now on. So December 13th to December 24th, there will be a new video every day celebrating mixedness for 12 days. And I will answer all the questions that I asked of my guests on the final day. So check that out. If you're not already a follower on Instagram, just head on over to @MilitantlyMix, and you can see those videos there. And it's been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate everybody who sent in their videos, because it's been cool. It's another way of getting to know people that I have been involved with through the show. It's been great. I think that's pretty much it for the announcements. So my guest this week is Joe Holt, who is a new cousin who's coming to us from St. Louis, the Arch City Defenders. And this one is a little bit different than I have normally done it. Usually, I have set up a time to do a pre-screen, a video chat with a guest or a potential guest. And then after we kind of break the ice, I schedule another time for us to actually record the interview. But COVID kind of changed that, actually changed it quite a bit, because one, even though we're home more, some of us, it doesn't really make sense to do this video recording or video meeting and then a recording later, because everybody's just home and already ready to go. So I usually spend about 15 minutes ahead of the recording to kind of do those icebreakers that I did in the beginning. And so Joe is a person in this category of someone I actually hadn't met before, either met virtually or in person before actually doing the recording. Pretty much they signed up on the Be a Guest of Militantly Mixed link on the website, and then I sent them a calendar. They picked a day, and then we got to going. So that's kind of how things are going to be going forward. One, because the list is filling up quite a bit on the Be a Guest of Militantly Mixed. I got a lot of people to still reach out to for January and February, and this is the new way it's going to be. So I don't know a whole lot about the guests now before we get into it. Whereas before I kind of know a little bit of something so that I can put that into the question. So it's a whole new world of how I'm doing Militantly Mixed right now. But Joe was really gracious in that kind of role, being able to just jump into the conversation and it feel very comfortable and like we've known each other, even though we didn't know each other. So I'm happy to share his story with y'all and look forward to continuing to get to know new cousin Joe and finding other ways in which we can utilize our mixedness to support our communities wherever we're at, or even on the internet like we do with Militantly Mixed. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our latest cousin to the Militantly Mixed family, Joe Holt. So my guest today is Joe. Why don't you get into it, cousin? Let's talk.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going? I'm so glad to be here and excited to talk with you.
Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, let everybody know who you are, and of course, the dreaded question that we all get asked, what part of the Dominican Republic are you from? No, if you don't mind mentioning what your ethnic background is so we can get into it.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm Joe Holt, Director of Development over at Arch City Defenders in St. Louis. Dad, husband, try to be a good son on occasion. And mostly I get everything but what I am. I am like Slovakian, Norwegian, and then African-American. Or if you were asking my dad, he would just say, we just black.
We just black, right?
Yeah.
I did see that you wrote down Black Viking. Is that
right.
because you...
That's the Norwegian thing going there. That's right.
So we talked a little bit before we got going a little bit, and we were kind of talking about this thing that we all kind of crave as mixed folks. A community that actually feels like we speak the same language, or that we don't have to provide context or anything like that. And so I understand that's sort of how you came to the show. What sort of things have you dealt with in your life that got you to the point that you started to search for
Yeah, I mean, so I think, it all starts with, like many people's stories, your first story of finding out that you're different than other folks when you originally thought that you were, just like everybody else. And so, I'm from the Midwest, St. Louis, born and raised. And, my mom lived in pretty poor, all Black community. So she get a pass because she had the dark kid. And there I felt very comfortable, right? I'm with my mom, who's white, rural, background, but I'm in the Black community. It wasn't until we would kind of venture out outside of that area that, you might get some looks. And I remember distinctly, we were at a fast food place and this guy was trying to get in front of my mom or something and just started cursing and saying, what's going on with that end baby and blah, 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 and just like going off on her. And so of course I'm asking these questions, at 6 years old, like, what's he talking about? Like, what is this? And, she totally avoided. And so then I just started asking more and more questions. And then, next thing you know, I'm doing my own personal search on like, wait a second. So not everybody's mixed. Like, some people assume that they are one thing or another or not at all, or, or very closeted about it. And so, that was kind of my first, I guess my first saga in the first chapter. Yeah.
It is weird how you can like start out and you can tell that both of your parents are different colors, but it's just a thing. Like literally everybody in my family was a different shade of something. So it wasn't a thing until moving to a school where most of the people were either all Black or all white. And then I'm like, my family is different. Like I didn't. Yeah. It is weird how you need somebody to either say something problematic or, whatever to actually make you realize that there's something about you that is not like the others.
Yeah, that conflict creates growth, though, So it's like you ask more questions, and I didn't really get to know my father's family. They were separated, and so my dad is actually, he's passed, but he was originally from Atlanta, via Pelham, Georgia. For those of you in the South listening, what up to Pelham? Population maybe 3,000, but. Yeah, I mean, and so I was just learning everything from the streets, but, at the same time, because you're a little bit different and, you're trying to figure a way out. Like I remember getting beat up by the Black kids, the white kids, the kids that were like, Latino, but in a small population. Like I was just getting it from everybody. Yeah. And it was hard and I didn't understand why it was happening. But then I joined the boys club and I remember just getting really good at talking to people, and talking my way out of it. Because at the time, I wasn't a tall kid. I wasn't a strong kid. I was just like average. And so I got really good with making friends. And then I befriended these two mixed brothers and they started calling me cousin. And then, every time I had problems, I'd be like, hey, cousin, beat these guys up and they were taking care of me. So, it was pretty good for a couple of years.
For me, I was adopted by the Samoan kids because I was tiny and I guess my personality was okay. So they came through and took care of me.
Well, that's good.
At what point did you go from like just thinking everybody is like you to actually identifying as a mixed person?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I want to say it was probably high school. So I think I really just said, no, I'm Black. That's the end of the story. Because I remember a lot of my Black friends saying like, look, nobody's going to associate you with anything else but Black. So you're Black. Right. Hearing a lot about the one drop rule and all this other stuff. And so, but it wasn't until I started like meeting other mixed folks, becoming more educated and understanding that I could actually have my own identity, that in high school, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not claiming either side. I want to claim all sides. And then, using sort of my defense mechanisms that I learned, when I was young, I really just started trying to make friends with everybody and had a pretty successful high school time because of it, like homecoming king and captain of all these sports and stuff like that. But it was really just learning what not to do and how to maneuver these really difficult conversations because I was so used to violence, So I'm like, I want to figure out how to have this conversation with this individual or individuals where they're laughing now and they think I'm okay and I'm not a threat. And, and it also helped that I was lifting a lot for football at the time. So I put on like 30 pounds of muscle. And so make, the charisma mixed with like, knowing how to get yourself out of a situation, it's kind of helped me through high school and even college, really.
I feel like being funny, being a fighter, or like different things like that. You got to pick one of these categories so that you can be sort of acceptable, despite the fact that you're the weird one or the different one from the group that you're around. For me,
which one did you fix? Yeah, or pick?
I was mostly funny. Because I was so tiny. I was like, my freshman year in high school, I was like 98 pounds. I was barely 5 foot. By the time I got to my tallest, I was 5'3", so like I wasn't going anywhere. I had a mouth on me, but I wasn't a fighter. So I always had fighting friends. Mm-hmm. And I think every hood kid has like your funny person that everybody wants to protect. And I was kind of that. I was that person.
That's good.
I could clown really well, which helped me because, in the hood, if you can't clown, good luck to you, baby.
That's right.
So there was stuff like that. Like I had that. And I was a dancer. So the other part was, that mixed girl could dance. And therefore I got more cred because my dad, even though he was Black, people would identify him as a Tom and stuff. So, not just because with my mom, he had a Japanese partner. And then with my stepmom, he had a Mexican Italian partner. So there was already a sort of there's never a Black woman type of thing, but there was identifiable Tomness coming from him. And so I almost had to like compensate for my Blackness because I felt Black as hell. Like you could not tell me I wasn't Black. Yeah. And then they started telling me I wasn't, and I had to deal with like my confusion related to all that. So yeah, I went the funny route so that I could find my tribe and be protected because I'm so small. So this has been coming up a lot lately. It's come up in a couple different conversations I've had. It's funny how this militantly mixed thing has gone. Like in the beginning, it was really about finding people at first that were mixed, any kind of mix, and then mostly Black and white biracial, because that was kind of who found me. And then there was this period of time where there's a lot of like white passing or white appearance conversations. Like, do I get to claim mixedness? And then the next thing was sort of like when you're married to, when your parents are one colonizer and one Asian, like that kind of stuff. I keep going through these phases. And right now, what seems to be the phase is for those of us that are mixed with Black, whether or not we go forward as we just Black, like you said at the beginning, or if we put mixed in front, do we say Black mixed? Do we mix Black? That kind of stuff. Because looking at us, no one's going to think we're white. Like, like no one's going to think we're white. So even if we were raised, I wasn't, but I know a lot of my listeners, you may have been raised by your white parent.
Right.
So you have this weird thing of like, no one sees me as white, but I was raised by this white person. So how do I maneuver? How do you feel about when a person either chooses to identify exclusively as Black or put mixed Black? Like, how do you feel about those kind of identities?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as individuals, like, people are free to do whatever they want. I think they're free to identify as one or the other or both or none. I like, the one thing that I do enjoy being a mixed person, talking to mixed people, is we're sort of fluid with that, love it or don't. And, there have been many times where I've seen people, pass as white on the phone to get a job. And
we
then
all
they're
got
like,
our
surprise, and I love it, like, I think people should be able to do whatever they want. Like, that's the whole point at the same time, but they got to be true to themselves, so don't buy, another culture if you can't, if you can't really identify with that. And if you can't identify with that, but you love the culture, explore it to the best of your ability, get into the community, struggle with them at the same time. But, just understand that there's certain identities that you just can't have, you just gotta be true to yourself.
Yeah, I find the conversations that I have, in particular with Black, white, biracial folks on the show, because I'm triracial, and even though technically half white, because both of my parents were half white, I didn't grow up around white people until I was a teenager. So there's still a whole lot of mystery surrounding like what it's like to grow up half white to me. But what I definitely identify more with the Japanese and the Blackness. But when we're in this space, we're walking around with our brown little selves, and people are deciding whatever they're deciding for us. I found that I went through this period of time where everybody was saying things like, you should be more proud. Don't mention that you're mixed. You should be proud of being Black. And then I'm like, yeah, but look at me. There was a period of time when I realized I didn't look Black to other people. Like I look Black to Black people, but I didn't look Black to other people. And once I figured that out, then there was this thing of like, well, I can't even claim Japanese because no Japanese is going to be like, hey, you must be a mixed Japanese. Like, I know that's not going to happen, but the Filipinos would accept me and the Mexicans would accept me
Right.
because I look like them and I had crunchy curly hair and stuff. It was the 90s. What are you going to do? And so then it was this thing of like, you should have pride because you look like these people that you're not. So like the Mexicans would be really hard on me. Like, you should be proud of being Mexican. I'm like, but I'm not Mexican. They're like, yeah, but you look Mexican.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, dang, like I'm not Black enough to be Black. I'm clearly never going to be white. I'm not going to be Japanese, but I'm even not Mexican enough for the Mexicans, despite not being Mexican.
Sure. Yeah.
What do I do with that?
Yeah.
Did you feel like you had to survive in pockets of people that you kind of resembled in different times in your life?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, still do. Right. Like, I'm 41, got a 16-year-old son. Like I still have to do that professionally, personally. I think, when we get adopted and we get shunned, right, by different groups.
True.
And
absolutely.
It really depends on the struggle between internal and external identity. If someone wants to, like, I get Italian all the time. I don't know why. Okay. Got no Italian. I mean, I think it's maybe just because there's a lot of Italians here in St. Louis, but constantly they're like, oh, this guy's Italian. We like this guy. We thought you were Italian. And I, it's not something that I'm against. Like, I love Italians. I love people in general. I will let them know, like, look, I appreciate that. I'm not Italian. Why did you think I was Italian? But I don't take offense to it either. But at the same time, I've been in those meetings where, you're the mixed guy in an all Black group, or you're a mixed guy in an all white group. And you kind of get muted from the group in your voice if it's speaking specific to, some racial things, or it gets elevated. I know with my white cousins a lot, they're like, ask me a lot of questions.
Right.
And I'm happy to answer because we're family. And then I've also been with my Black cousins, and they've been, talking, real bad about white folks. And I'm like, yo, like, I'm right here. You're talking about my moms and my peeps too, like, show some respect. So, I think that we all have to maneuver it. I think we will always have to maneuver it as long as people really elevate this whole race thing. And then let's be honest, like after, if we were ever in, past race, it'd be something else, economics, color, whatever.
You and I also talked about, we don't have to mention what the thing was, but you and I have both been in spaces that have been mixed where we tribe up. We find a different way to tribe up. Because if we're all mixed in this room, what's the other thing? We divide up by women. We divide up by we divide up by sexuality. Like different things like that might actually make us tribe up. We're just naturally tribal. And
I can talk broadly. So I was at this group meeting with a bunch of mixed folks. And long story short, I thought like, this is going to be Shangri-La. This is the spot where I'm going to feel completely comfortable, and people sectioned off by darkness and lightness. Even though everyone in there was, mixed people, transracial adoptees, like any form that you can think of. And still at the end of the day, there was a lighter side and a medium side and a darker side. And I was like, man, like we just can't even get ourselves organized, So
I think it's really human nature. Like even though here in America specifically, it's a very individualistic culture, I think generally our human nature is to tribe up in some way, shape, or form. If it's in the workplace, you tribe up with the people that either have the same educational background as you or racial background or gender or whatever. I find that I tend to gravitate towards the people who, like me, have to code switch. Like I have a name that comes with a soundtrack and it tells my story before you see my face. And then you see my face. And if you're white, you're like, how does she have a name like that? If you're Black, you're like, oh, I wonder what she's mixed with. Like I tend to tribe up in the workplaces with people that also have that going on. We're the people that some person eventually is going to tell us we're articulate, because we have names that are associated with like hoodness or whatever.
Sure.
So that tends to be the people that I end up tribing up with. It happens everywhere I work at, and it's completely accidental. Like it's not intentional. It's just something I finally realized. I'm like, oh, all of us have these big old names, and we're, we're ambiguous and we're educated, and people will talk to us like that, like, oh, it's such a surprise that someone with the name like Charmaine Latrice. Like stuff like that. So I find like it's just a natural thing that we do in places, and you hope that when you find, because we exist in so many places that we're not exactly like everybody else, you hope that in a space like a mixed space that wouldn't happen. But I don't think we can help it. That being said, I've found that in Militantly Mixed, like in the social group where we hang out on Sundays and things like that, so far it's been a really supportive place. As this space grows, I don't doubt that at some point, if we got together in person, it would be kind of.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd be down, try to get somewhere maybe in the middle,
right.
Just saying,
The goal was to have some kind of retreat. That was kind of something I started talking about. And, then the Rona happened. So, I mean, maybe once it clears up, we'll have like the Mediterranean one or the camping one or the whatever. Like we'll find little places that we can
I'd be down for that. Yeah.
It would be fun, right?
So I want to ask a question about the phenomena that I get a lot. It might just be me, but I've never heard it on your podcast. So sometimes mixed folks kind of act like cats. And what I mean like that is like you walk in the room, right? And everyone's, seems monoracial, except for that one person that has got something.
Yeah.
But you both avoid each other because you don't want to ask the question that we all get asked. But at the same time, you want to let the person know you're around. So it's like you hover. You
want to give whatever the mixed equivalent to the nod is.
It's like, if it goes down, I got your back, but we can't talk right now. Like I can't talk to you,
Yeah.
We'll have a meeting later,
Pre-militantly mixed Charmaine would look for the eye contact so that you could kind of do the little nod or whatever with the understanding, like we got to stay separate so that people don't think, oh, there goes the brown ones, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And in those cases,
Jordan forces.
Right. So in those cases, we'd have these secret family dinners where it would be like on a Friday, once a month, the brown folks would all get together so we could wild out. Or mixed folks or whatever. But we would in the workplace never interact unless there was a white person in the room. And part of that was unspoken, and part of that was just kind of like, that's what we're doing, right? We're on the same page. Okay. Now, post militantly mixed, Charmaine that filter is gone. And I think part of it is because I was almost probably trying to sabotage myself in the workplace so that I would be forced to do this professionally 100%.
Yeah.
That filter has disappeared. So I will talk, and I have found that white people that I'm working with now are actually kind of responding to the fact that I am all the way out, out of the closet about being brown and mixed and proud of it and things like that. So I would say that I have two different versions of that phenomenon, but there were times when it was like, we can see each other from across the room and that's okay. We get it, but let's not mix together because they're going to confuse us anyway. And at one point you're going to mess up or I'm going to mess up.
Right.
They're going to be like, whatever the brown ones did, I think that is, we do need some kind of like mixed equivalent to the nod because it's not always Black mixed. Sometimes it's other things. I have also gone up to people before, and I remember I was working on a TV show and there was a kid there that I just knew like the whole time. He gave off big time, not Black enough for Black folks, not white enough for white folks vibes, like big time. And so one day he happened to be sitting next to me and I was like, psst, hey, are you like me? And they were like, what do you mean? And I was like, are your parents different colors? And he goes, yes. And I'm like, okay. And so that was it. Like, that was like how we just kind of had that.
We're best friends now.
So after that, it was like, I'd go get a cookie at craft services and then I'd slide that cookie on over to that person or, whatever. Yeah, like there was little things that we started doing for each other. And it was legitimately the only reason was because we had, I saw his mixedness, identified it. He felt seen, and also you have a cousin in the room. So.
Well, and I wonder if it's a time thing too, because what I'm talking about, this little phenomena that I used to have to get with a lot was about a year or two ago. I will tell you. So, I hired somebody who was also mixed, and, at the time they didn't know that I was mixed because, I'm doing the
incognito
interview. Yeah, exactly. But I'm doing the interview from the phone, so they don't know. Mm-hmm. And then when we meet for like, here's your, packet and your onboarding, they were like, and I'm like, that's right. And finally, when this person was, leaving the organization, they're like, you were the first mixed boss I've ever had. Mm. And I was kind of like, well, how was it? She's like, exactly the way I wanted it to be. So
that's awesome. It
felt good. And so now I see people coming out a little bit more. And then where I'm at right now, it's like all the mixed folks are like, hey, you're mixed, right? Like we need to talk. There's a whole group here. Like we need to chill. So yeah, it's nice. It's I think, maybe, I don't know what happened. Maybe it's your podcast or maybe just something where people are trying to get a little bit more comfortable with conversations that normally or used to be historically would be awkward. Now they're like, nope, like we're just going to own it, all of it,
Yeah.
And I hope that's the way it's going.
I hope that's the way it's going. I kind of piecemeal did that throughout my life, like coming out as mixed, coming out as this, like all throughout my life, it's always been this sort of like, okay, I'm in a new space. I have to decide when is it appropriate or comfortable for me or safe for me to come out as the mixed person in the office or whatever.
Yeah.
And some of it would just kind of slide out by accident. Like I might mention having a Japanese grandma, and then someone's like, man, I just did not know that brown was coming from Japan. But then, and they're confused by that, but they're like, how does someone who's Japanese have a name like Charmaine? Like you can see people doing the math, like trying to figure it out. And then sometimes it would just be like, you know what? I'm so tired of having to do this. So get your questions out. I'm Black, I'm Japanese, I'm white. I got an angry British grandmother. I got an angry Japanese grandmother. Like I got like, okay, it's out. Like, let's just go for it.
Maybe we need to create laminates. Just like, here you go,
just something,
just return it at the end of the day,
But I think now, and it's a combination, I think, of just like society was going that way. I think the younger generation is getting in touch with their mixedness way earlier than those of us that are in our 40s and maybe even 30s, because I'm still talking to some folks that are in their 30s that are just like, I didn't have anybody to talk to. Yeah. Whereas like the 12-year-old at the school or whatever is just like, your parents are the same colors? How embarrassing for you. Like they're like, it's a different generation of kids now. So I think that makes it a little bit easier for us too. And then of course, the recent social unrest has definitely been like, you know what? Let's just do it. And I think that for me, what was the most freeing part of doing Militantly Mixed, and I wasn't there at first. It took like, maybe 10 or 11 episodes where I finally was picking up how many of us felt like we had to hide it and that it was only going to be on this podcast that they could be themselves. And I remember talking to someone in the moment on the show, and I was just, and they were so apologetically mixed that like I felt bad in the moment. And I just kind of yelled out, like, just be your mixed ass self. It's fine. This is how you are. And that became a slogan accidentally. Yeah. But it was really the mission all along. I just didn't have a phrase for it. And it really is like, we spend so much of our time as mixed people, as different genders and sexualities and whatever, wherever we're from, we spend so much time trying to perform for the comfort of others while making ourselves uncomfortable. And if we actually could just put that out there on Front Street and people know, like, listen, with me, you're going to get a militantly mixed person who's going to talk about issues that are going to make you uncomfortable. I'm going to stop and pause and explain things when you need explanation. And then sometimes when you ask a question, I'm going to say, not now. And that's going to need to be okay. I am off the clock right now. That's right. So like, I think now that is becoming more evident, more people are getting more comfortable with it. And as a result, that's why we're now seeing more podcasts. I do feel like there was a period of time I was in sort of mixed podcast isolation. Absolutely. But I think it's getting more out there because people finally you just need to hear one person say it's okay. Yeah. And I think that validates you and you move forward and you do your thing. I was accidentally an unofficial validator for like the first year of the show, where people would literally email me like, is it okay if I look like this, but my dad is this and my mom is this? Is it okay for me to say this? And I didn't expect, that to be the thing that happened, but it did. And I hope I found the best way to be able to help a person in validation, but let them know it wasn't up to me, like it's really up to you. Right. I hope I balanced that. Okay.
You do a great job. And like I said, I've been listening for a long time, and, the folks that come on your show, they really feel that connection with you, but they also feel connection with, the people that are listening too. And it really is, we're all cousins. We're all going through the same stuff. Doesn't matter the identities or the racial backgrounds or even places where we live in the country or the world. Yeah. But we're all going through it. Wow. And this is, like I said, it's kind of like a nice online lounge, podcast lounge where we can all kind of walk and kind of eavesdrop and listen to somebody else, tell our stories, really. Yeah. So it's cool. So
my favorite part is when I get a message from somebody because they listened to somebody's episode and they were like, oh my gosh, that was basically, it could have been me telling that story. And every single person will at some point say, I'm not that interesting. I don't know why anybody would want to hear about me. And then I'm like, wait for it. Because I'm going to send you a message later on and someone's going to have listened to your episode and they're going to be touched by your specific story. And, you'll realize that you're not just doing this. You're not just having this conversation for yourself. You are having this conversation for others. And I like the idea of service to community as the main mission of the show. And doing that, literally just a conversation about your mixedness is going to be a service to the mixed community. So I really enjoy that. How do you be mixed in your day to day? Like what's it like?
Yeah. I mean, so, at work, I think it's front and center because, especially with where I work right now, we're definitely challenging a lot of racism, racist policies, and at the same time, you're trying to be a connector. So, I've always tried to find that nice sweet spots where it's like, hey, I'm going to be very clear with you on who I am, identity wise, economically, et cetera. But at the same time, I do think that we can come together. And I think that's something that, a lot of us in St. Louis, in the Midwest, we have to deal with a lot because there's always some polarizing effects going on. We don't have a lot of echo chambers here. We're always kind of dancing on landmines. And so, you hear about Midwest Nice or, different things. It's not because we want to do that. It's like, you're having
Survival.
14 conversations, and 7 of those conversations are maybe the way that you think, and then the other 7 are exactly not the way you think, but you still have to do business with this individual.
Right.
So, I definitely, I love it. I own it. My family owns it, and we love being mixed. We love telling people that. I will check people, if they go too far one way or the other, about things that, I just don't agree with.
Sure.
But I do believe in sort of finding common ground,
Yeah.
and I think that's how I'm not very polarizing. I try to listen to the ridiculousness, one side or the other, and then try to say, okay, but how does this affect all of us, and what can we do about it? Like, don't tell me about the problems. Like, what's the solution here?
Yeah.
And, I think if you listen a lot, you're patient with folks, and then you let them know where you're coming from in this, specific sense, being mixed and, what you're about, people like to know up front, they like the disclaimer, right? This is what you're going to get, out of this package.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to come somewhere with you in order to get stuff done, whatever that is.
You did touch on it a little bit in the beginning where you mentioned, you were raised by your white mom and you didn't get to have conversations that clearly explained what experiences you were having as a mixed kid in those moments. As a mixed father of mixed children, how are you assisting them with their identities and understanding of how people are perceiving them?
Yeah. So, there's definitely not a book on that either, right? I wish there, and if there is, please send me a free copy. No. So, I have a 16-year-old son. That's the only kid I got right now. And I let him know, like, you're going to see it all. He is like light brown. So he's not like dark brown. He's not going to get the immediate stares, but people are going to be like, there's something going on there. And so we've had the talk about police, right? That every brown person has. Cause I'm like, look, like one of these days, this is going to happen to you. This is what you need to do. But at the same time, I've never taught him to ever deal with people on a racial level. And it seems to have worked. He's got a bunch of friends that are all different races, gender identities, et cetera. I love it. Like, I couldn't be any happier about how that's turning out. And I think he feels comfortable with himself, and just owning, the stuff that he wants to do. We're both kind of comic book nerds, so you might like that. And he likes, the stuff that he likes. And I say, own it, just do what you got to do. And I also try to keep him from some of the things I didn't do, because I think in the beginning I used to kind of slide, like I kind of like will give you just enough when I was, in high school and maybe early college. I started to own my mixes, but I also wasn't like all the way out there, like you're going to deal with me in this way, because I was still going through my journey. Right.
Right.
But with him, I'm like, just let people know up front, like this is the way it is. And then you will find your clan, and he's found them, and it's awesome.
Man, for me, finding nerds when I was an adult was such a lifesaver. Like, because being a hood kid that was into comics, that was also a girl, like there wasn't a whole lot of spaces for me to thrive. And so it did take growing up and finding it. But yeah, when you do find your clan, it is nice to know like that there are ways that you can deal with all the different aspects of your identity in this collective group of mishmashy people that you have. I think that's really helpful. In terms of like side by side with your kid down the street, do people identify you as family or no?
Yeah, they do.
Is it obvious?
Yeah, one guy even went out of his way at a post office and said, I know who your dad is. Like, which, I took as a compliment, but I could have taken it the other way. But yeah, we look that's very funny. Similar, although he's like a foot taller than me. But
I look just like my dad. Like if I was browner and had curlier hair, I'm the spit of him. But if I'm angry, my face looks like my mom. And it's the only time that people can identify my mother as my mother is if they see me angry and they know her. It's such a weird phenomenon because other than that, I don't look like her at all.
Let's explore that a little bit. So do you find that you when you're angry, you sort of evoke your mom when you get into that state?
I don't know, because both of my parents
weren't great in terms of like them as people, but also them as parents, and different kinds of, like, my dad was a more manipulative, abusive person, whereas my mom was more angry, abusive. So there was more psychological violence with my dad and physical with my mom. And I have worked so hard to not be like their kid, like not denying that they're my parents, but like not being a product of those two personalities. But this eyebrow,
that one right there.
It's just like, I think that I'm also, when I'm angry, I'm also tamping down what is potentially a really explosive personality, because my mom had one.
Yeah.
And I think it's a combination of like, there's like generational anger that is coursing through my veins, and I'm just sitting here trying to like, let's be mixed and love everybody, but also if I gotta put it down, I'll put it down, I guess. But like, you know, so yeah, like I'm, a lot of the times when I'm angry, I'm trying to like calm the mom in me, maybe. It's a weird thing, but yeah, it comes up in my face for some reason that I end up looking like her when I'm when I'm angry. And I noticed that because my dad would in particular become more violent when I was angry, because I would look like my mom. So he was now fighting me and my mom in those kind of moments. It was just a weird thing about that. But I like trying to figure out where our patchwork faces and bodies come from based off of mixedness. Like, yeah, I got kind of general like yellowy brown skin or whatever, but I'm built like the women on my Black side. And I have hair more like the women on my Japanese side. And, you know, like there's all these little things like in the patchwork. So I'm always curious. But I think we do tend to look like our dads. I think biologically.
I definitely look like my dad. Like I'm just like a lighter version of him, basically. I don't sound like him, but no, he was dark. He was real smooth voiced, you know. I could never get down his voice. and he had a Southern draw. I just don't have that, you know.
I've heard a couple different Missouri accents, and my dad's dad's mom side of the family is from Missouri, like way back.
Okay. All right.
But most of them are from Texas and then by way of California. But I've heard some of those accents, and you have a very like non-detectable.
Yeah. So I have sort of the white Missouri accent only because when I'm working, it works. But I everywhere I go when I'm working, because I used to work for a lot with the union, I pick up an accent immediately.
I do too.
And I can't help it, and I love it. And even when I hear it back, I'm like, I don't care, it's mine now because I'm in this area. And and I just kind of move that way. It's just what. And when I get mad, I'm hella black. When all that starts popping off, like my family's like, he's about to go black Saiyan. And they just kind of like, all right, let's calm down, big fella.
That's funny.
Let's talk this out,
So you have moved around a lot for work and everything like that, but were you in St. Louis during like Ferguson? Was that a part of? And how does that impact you living where you live?
Yeah, so I live like a mile and a half from the police station. So I mean, I'm here, and but I used to be a police officer, and I was working with the union at the time of that, and now I work for an organization that's trying to defund the police. Mm-hmm. So I worked for the public defender as well. So like I've done a lot around legal activities here in the state on all the sides. And so when I heard about it at first, I actually heard from the streets. So I came back from a camping trip, and the people that washed my car, they're like, hey, did you hear that this dude got shot by the police in the back? Mm. And this is like the day after, right? This is before media. This is before all that stuff. And I was like, no, what happened? They said, my boyfriend's cousin was working on a roof and saw the whole thing and told me what happened was the guy was like, hey, I don't want anything. He walked away from the police officer. He got shot in the back. Mm-hmm. I said, oh man, that's that's messed up. And, we talked about other stuff, and then they said, I think they might do some protests. And I said, they should, that's not right. And then, you a year later, right, we're all waiting on that verdict. I'm working as an organizer on a big campaign, and we're all like, we're ready to pop off. And long story short, we, when we didn't get the verdict that we thought was fair about the murder of Mike Brown, I said, hey, you guys are off. You guys can do whatever you want. And they did. They went out to help protest and let folks know. But at the same time, I'm a dad, right? So like at the time, my kid's a small child. I mean, they're, my gas stations are getting blown up. I'm hearing all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I go home and I'm like protecting my house because I'm like, I don't know how big this is going to get, and it's like right around Thanksgiving. So it was cool. A lot of people came to me later, when some things subsided and said, Joe, you used to be a cop, but you also used to be on the public defender. You're half black, half white. Like, talk to me, make me understand this. And this was like police mostly, like my some of my
so like white police were coming to you for
like
translation,
right? Because I used to be. I was in the academy, and so I still have friends who are white police officers, and so they were like, make this make sense to me. Like, why would you blow up your own place? And I said, when we got that verdict, this wasn't our place anymore. You guys did not give us justice. Yeah. And so who cares? Like, who
also
cares?
Proximity is when it's where you are. When you're like, I grew up during the LA riots. It's not like a lot of everybody had cars or whatever to drive to other neighborhoods to do, like they did it where it happened, like they did it where it happened. And that's a big part of that experience. Do you feel like you were sort of unfairly an expert for?
Yes. Yeah, I do think, for the first 6 months, because, to this day, I still get some of these questions, but for the first 6 months, I was like, why am I getting these? It's obvious, but I was like, why am I getting these questions? And then it's like, oh yeah, because I'm like the most
six people are going to save the world from racism.
yeah, maybe, you never know. But I was definitely that entry point for all the folks, And I would get, protesters ask me like, can cops do that? No, they can't, kill you. And, you can always go one level up. That's what the law says, is like, if you think your life's in danger, but, somebody just talking to you and that not listening to you, that's just, that's not right. That's not legal. That's murder,
Yeah. I feel
but I didn't feel like I was should have been, the person telling everybody, what was going on. I was like, you need to talk to people in that community that were affected. All I can just tell you is, some stuff that I learned from the academy or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like mixed people do kind of get an unfair shake in terms of being a translator or a palatable Black, so that they can try to find you're one of the good ones, Franklin, like the Peanuts thing or whatever. I feel like that happens to us a lot. And we're in this weird position of like, if I don't take this moment to educate, I might miss out on an opportunity, or that person might miss out on an opportunity for growth, but also it's so much work, and it can be very taxing for us. And also just because we are mixed doesn't mean that we're equipped to protect the world from racism. Some of us have parents that are actually racist against the other partner, but they still got together and had us. Like, that's a real thing. So it gets kind of frustrating. And I'm wondering too, like, just generally, how do we deal with it? Because I think a lot of us deal with it differently. And I think like maybe the way I deal with it and the way you deal with it might be different, because you grew up with a white parent and I grew up with the Black and Japanese parents, who happened to also be half white, but the white parents weren't there, so I'm curious. I don't know how to do this work, but I want to figure out what this work could be, of figuring out like, how do you translate for white people versus how do you translate for Black people versus how I do it versus how this person does it. Yeah. Because I imagine there's really interesting emotional acrobatics that happen for us.
I think everybody has to be in that space, and some folks do it way better. than you or I ever will. And then I think there's other folks that just can't every day. They're just like, I try to keep it balanced, and I kind of see it as a burden of love. If someone's reaching out to me with some crazy, conversation about something, I want to be like, okay, like I just need the strength to be patient with this individual and just have this conversation. Like everybody, I'm not always on my game, like you said, sometimes I'm like, today's not the day.
Today's not the day.
With all the stuff that's been going on this year, with 2020 and all the murders of Black men, Black women, like there have been people in my, workplaces, not where I'm at now, but other places where I'm not the person to talk to today because you don't want to hear what I got to say today.
Yeah.
Like, give me a couple weeks. Here's some books. Read
these books, please.
Right, and then come back to me, with that, or I'll just defer them, just straight up, like we can't have this conversation. Yeah. So, I'd ask you to ask somebody else. So
there's some people that I have, I have the conversations with. I try to be helpful, but then when I notice that point at which there's no reciprocal effort, and it's really just them having these therapy sessions with me, so that they can be like, oh no, I did the work. I talked to a brown person. That in those cases, I kind of fade out on those ones because I'm like, that one's probably not going to pan out. But it's exhausting. It's positive and negative for both of us, for on all sides for us. It's interesting work to do. I do think it's important at the same time that it's not always great that we have to be the ones that do that for folks. Before we start to wrap up, I do want to ask, do you have a Black Viking meal? Because ever since I heard Black Viking, for some reason that's in my head. I want to know how does a Black Viking eat?
Well, yeah, I mean, so here in St. Louis, we're all about barbecue.
Yeah,
so
right.
Just, copious amounts of barbecue. Really, my wife's really got me hip to lamb, so we've been doing like these giant, lamb shakes and stuff like that. But really, I go all out. Like for my 40th, I had mead. I had,
how do you acquire mead in 2020?
Oh, there is mead everywhere.
Is there? I had no idea.
There is mead. I am not joking. I think I said I requested mead. And I got I think 6 different bottles, and I was drinking it out of a
big old start.
Like we went all the way in. Yeah. But yeah. If you haven't checked out mead, it's made out of honey. It's delicious.
See, I like honey. I'm not a big drinker. I definitely don't like yeasty things.
It's not yeasty. No,
it's not yeasty.
No, okay. No. Try it out. There's different. It's kind of like a mix of like a different kind of wine, but it doesn't taste like wine.
Okay.
It's got its own thing going on. You can get some that taste like wine, but just get like a normal. You're out there in Cali, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody's got some.
It never occurred to me to search for it, but
Somebody send her some mead, some free mead.
It's dope to think that there's modern day Vikings just drinking out of horns and making mead.
Yeah, you got to go for it. Yeah.
That's funny. Did you have much access to Norwegian quarter or Nordic culture at all through your mom's family? They were Americanized by the time?
No. Yeah, my family was really kind of doubled down more on the Slovakian, Czech Republic stuff, which is cool.
I hear that you can trade a pair of blue jeans in the Czech Republic for some really cool stuff. They like trade.
Oh, I don't know. See, I've never been to Czech Republic.
I've never been either, but I've heard this.
I would love to go. I go to the Czech festival every year.
Yeah.
And everybody knows who I am because I'm the only
You're the Black
guy.
Czech.
That's right. And I started speaking Czech. They're like, oh yeah, I remember that guy from last year.
That's awesome. All right. So I like to ask everybody, and this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you jumping on with me. And just to be able to add another cousin to my family. But I'd like to ask everybody who comes on the show, what do they love most about being mixed?
I think opportunity. If I have to if I have to really say that, like, you have the opportunity to be a spokesperson for so many different things. And I know it can be tedious, but we're in a unique position. You know, we're kind of like ambassadors for humans. And we can talk to non-mixed people, mixed people, which then goes into all the other, you know, things that aren't, you know, one thing or the other. And I like being in that space personally. I like to be able to connect with folks and always have sort of a unique viewpoint on things, but then try to connect those things. So I think it's just the opportunity to connect. That's what I like.
Yeah. Every conversation is an opportunity to learn something, grow, or hopefully fix somebody.
Yeah. And if it's bad, then you learn at least not to mess with that person. So,
exactly. You know. Do you want to tell people how they can connect with your organization or anything like that?
Oh, sure. So like I said before, work for the Arch City Defenders. Please check them out, archcitydefenders.org. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. I think I'm Joe Holt or Joseph Holt. I don't know. I got the Arch behind me. So just look at the St. Louis Arch. I'm like the only Joe Holt with the St. Louis Arch. And then, you know, if you're rolling through St. Louis, hit me up on LinkedIn and, you know, we'll get a coffee or something.
Have a cup of mead.
You know what? Yes, we will. Yes, we will. If it's available. And after COVID. All right.
And after
I'm
COVID.
trying to
right.
get people soon.
Exactly. Militantly Mixed is a ManeHustle Media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Charmaine Fury. Music is by David Bogan the One. You can follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. If you'd like to become a sponsor of Militantly Mixed, please go to patreon.com/militantlymixed for monthly sponsorship or paypal.me/militantlymixed for a one-time only donation. And if you like what you hear on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to be your mixed-ass self. ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.